Hey, Taylor Elwood here, and today I want to talk about a submission myth that I see put out there a lot, which is that submission is really being passive. That there's this idea that when a man submits, he's being passive, and therefore he's not in his masculine. Something that I have discovered in my own explorations of submission around the action of surrender. And it's that surrender is an action. It requires activity on your part to occur. When I surrender to my mistress, I'm not just laying there passively, just like, oh, do whatever you want with me. No. A lot of times, what I'm really doing, I'm doing a lot. I'm taking a lot of action, but I'm surrendering to her direction and her focus for me. So, for example, whether that's in the bedroom or somewhere else, I may be taking action and I'm not attached to being in control of that action, but there is still a very active component of surrendering. Surrendering calls on me to let go of the need to be in control, let go of the thought that I have control over the situation, and instead surrender to the experience and be fully present in it. And yet there is this active component. And I guess the best way I can share this is that, like, today I woke up this morning and I was thinking to myself, like, oh, like I'd recently done some activities around like putting some ads out there and things like that. And the first thing I wanted to do was go to my phone and see, like, did anything happen? What I did is I surrendered that. I surrendered the need to figure out if anything happened. I mean, at a certain point, I started to look and see, okay, yeah, I may need to change some things or do some things differently, but I surrendered the need to be in control of what was happening because I recognized that the more I fixated on trying to be in control, the more it would actually keep me from being fully present with whatever the results were and being able to make adjustments and changes. I had to surrender myself. I had to surrender the need to, quote unquote, be dominant, to be in control, to lead. Instead, lead from service, from presence and awareness. It may be odd, like I do talk about leadership some because it's, I still show up as a leader in my communities. I still show up as a leader in my life. I have to. The reason that sovereign submission has the word sovereign in it is because in order to be submissive, that necessarily has to come from a place of sovereignty. If I'm submitting to somebody else, I am doing it from a place of sovereignty. I'm saying yes to myself. There's an action right there. I'm saying yes to myself, and I'm saying yes to myself in terms of my own sense of self-worth and my value as a person and a man. And when I'm surrendering, I am letting go of the idea that I have to have, like, that I need to be in control. This is the challenge that a lot of men have around this concept of surrender and submission, even though they may secretly crave it, because the overall lesson that they've been told is I have to be in control. I have to lead. I have to be the one who's in charge of everything. Aside from how exhausting that is and how that may not even be what you really want, let's take just the understanding that you can still be an active person in your life, and that surrender and submission isn't about letting go of taking action. It is about acknowledging that you don't need to be in control. Every time someone tells me that they need to be in control, what I really look at is, like, how hard are they holding on to that sense of control? How tightly, as an example, how tightly are they gripping this to have control? And what are they giving away when they're holding so tight? Surrender is an active experience. to surrender something, to submit, to make the choice to step out of the dominant paradigm requires a willingness to take action. But you're taking action with the understanding that in letting go of the control, you are also letting go of everything you've been told. You are actively letting go of something. You're actively going against what you have been told to be as a man. And we as men, we've been told to be a certain way. We've been told that we need to be in control, that we need to lead. There's a reason why this message is so prevalent in men's transformational work. Because there's this pressure, this expectation. So even though men are doing their inner work to transform themselves, they're still in some ways relying upon outdated paradigms of being, because that's what's been embedded in the experience of masculinity. And that kind of thing isn't going to be undone overnight. So if I'm choosing to surrender and submit, I am in a very real sense going against those cultural paradigms. And that is an action in and of itself. It is a significant action that changes the way we show up in the world. I want you to think about that, because a lot of times we get stuck on this idea of being in control. But being in control isn't necessarily going to get you everything that you want. A lot of times being in control just ends up isolating you. You end up being lonely at the top. What would it look like if you were actively to surrender and release everything that you've been told? To recognize that it is a myth that submission is passive. And really put it, let's take a moment and put it onto the other foot. If you know a woman that's a submissive, don't think for one instance that she isn't having to take action on her part internally to submit. If she wants to feel safe with a man, if she wants to feel like she can truly submit, there is still a level of action occurring inwardly, even if she wasn't telling you that. Surrender is not a passive activity. Submission is not a passive activity. It is something that we come back to every moment, every day, to some degree or another. When I choose to surrender and submit, a lot of times what I'm really doing is I'm checking inwardly with myself, and I'm saying, is this what I really want? And I'm asking it from a sovereign perspective. Is this what I want as a sovereign man? Because if the answer is no, then I need to honor that. If the answer is, hey, this isn't working for me, I need to speak up and actually say something. If I don't, then I'm setting myself up to fail in a huge way. This is what we don't always recognize in our work and our lives. So I want to challenge you on the notion that surrendering is a passive experience. If you're a man who's watching this, I'd love to get your feedback in your comments below. What does it mean to surrender? How active is it for you? Because I can guarantee you, at least in my case, there is a fair amount of checking in with myself. And sometimes it means speaking up and speaking to what I need or want or what calls to me. Surrender has never been a passive experience for me. And I think that when we get caught up in these notions as to what surrender means or what it is, we're actually fundamentally ignoring a significant part of the experience, because we're saying, well, it's got to be this way. And so we're actually fighting to make it that way instead of actually exploring what it really is for us. Surrender for you may not be the same thing as surrender for me. But let's acknowledge that there is some form of action happening, that it is an active process. It's not something that's passive. And there may be some passivity in there at times. And there's something really powerful about being able to, for example, kneel and In the kneeling, just for like a few moments, allow yourself to really go quiet. Be passive. There is a moment for that. But really, there's a moment for passivity in everything. There's no, when we categorize things one way or another, we're actually limiting our experience. So, there is room for passivity and dominance. It may seem odd to say that, but a dominant who doesn't know how to stop and pause and let the moment build up really isn't a dominant. They're not showing that they're able to read the room, and that is a form of being able to be passive in the moment can lead to a greater and deeper experience and understanding of like how to bring joy or how to get what they want or whatever else. So, and how to give the submissive what they want. And in our lives, this also applies to, what's around us. Like, when do we need to let go of control? And when do we need to actually, and how is that a form of action? So sit with that for a bit. And if you got more questions, feel free to leave a comment or check out my free booklet or sign up for Sacred Yes, which is happening on December 11th. I'd love to see some of you there. Thanks.